Hello, guys. It is Friday. It is the 7th of August. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Gin and Tonic Show. A lot of tonic, no gin. It's hot out here. Hello, welcome, everybody. Hello, welcome, everybody, to the panel. How's the week been?
Good
Nothing.
afternoon, good evening to everybody. Yeah, it's been good. I've been on a juice cleanse, so I'm feeling fit. It's amazing because I don't really feel
Again.
things a lot. It takes a while for things to take an effect, but the last few days when I've been running, I just haven't felt tired. It's felt like I could continue running, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Obviously, I'm breathing and I'm running a fairly decent pace, but I was like, I'm not feeling tired. Sometimes my legs, or oftentimes my legs are tired. So there's something to be said for doing a cleanse. I mean, they did 3 day water only. I only drank water for 3 days and then went on to the juice thing for 7 days. So I've done the 7 days. Sometimes not easy because I like to snack, so I have to be very disciplined. But yeah, I'm feeling good. So thanks for
Wow.
asking.
Wow, 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 wow. I'm impressed. Okay, well, if it helps you, I mean, great. Why not? Yeah, sure. Okay, what else? What about Mr. Moose? How, Mustaf? How
Uh,
are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Over the week, I think our last discussion was last week, and we actually discussed a lot in regards to the documentation of history, even from the Shia perspective. I remember that, yeah, there's some flaws there too, and I actually found even some, how the Shia Hadith Nahjul Balagha, which is the sermons of Ali, that is. So I found like it was from the University of like the actually from the Khurasa Islamic Center in Karachi that I actually found that there's the Najal Balagha copy, which actually talks about the compilation. So that was kind of a little treasure. It's a little nitbit that I would like to share today. But yeah, that's how productive it's been so far. But other than that, just examinations and assignments.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now we go to the doctor himself, Dr. Muhammad. What have you got for us?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Hello to the panel, to Stops, to Robs, and of course, another week of Mustafa. We certainly appreciate that, and I hope everybody's okay. And yeah, I am the doctor this week. I'm your friendly neighborhood quack. And this week's suggestion is if the heat is getting to you, drink camel urine. That's what
Oh,
that's what I have been
yes.
advised to do. That's what I'm advising everybody else to do. And maybe towards the end of the show, I can give some an anecdotal experience as to my recent conversations with a Muslim as to the benefits of drinking camel urine.
Oh.
I mean,
Oh, we'd love to hear about that and the
Uh,
evidence of how it rejuvenates you like it did with my actual medically tested juice fast.
yeah,
So we'll compare and
this is
contrast camel pee with proper juice fasting.
what
Personally, I thought you
ended up with. Yes.
personally I thought you was taking the piss, but it turns it's an
No,
old
no,
gag,
no.
but it still works.
No, I'm serious about it, and it makes a big difference. And my skin feels
Oh,
better as well.
yes.
Again, you've got to be disciplined to do it, but all we have to do is compare. I won't be taking obviously I'm a comparison. Somebody else can do it, but I'm not going to compare this with drinking pee for 7 days. Thanks very much.
Oh.
uh,
Okay, and welcome to the chat. Welcome, lovely people who are watching us and who are commenting here. And how come I can read most epic black star? Okay, here I can read it. Why is it that if I go and look at you on Discord, for example, it makes absolutely no sense what it says there? Absolutely amazing. Okay, thank you very much for joining us on the Gin and Tonic Show. We are a group of people who speak about Islam, and it's just Islam and nothing but Islam. What we try and do is we try and help Muslims and non-Muslims to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. How do we do that? Well, we don't attack anybody. We don't go and I don't know. I don't think we spread a lot of vitriol or things like that. So what we try and do is we give a live show every Friday, and you can either join us here on the panel or you can join us in the chat where you can just type away amongst yourselves or ask us questions or whatever, or you can watch it later in the archive. So we broadcast live to YouTube and to Facebook. So there's two alternatives that you have where you can go and watch it. If you want us to go somewhere else, if it's more convenient for you, let us know, and we'll see if we'll make a plan. We address Islam and we critique Islam. We don't attack. We don't needlessly go and say things that are not required. So what we try and do is we try and stay factual. We try and go and address the claims made in Quran and the Sunnah. Now, Muslims by now are scared out of their wits. Okay, so I don't know why we now have like zero any kind of challenge by Muslims. And I think the shock is pretty deep in what is happening at the moment with the claim that the Quran is preserved, protected, and it's always the same, that now we have 100% definite evidence that this is not the case. And I think it is shaking the foundations of Islam at the moment. So I think a lot of people are quite shook up. There are some people who are trying to make a brave face, and we'll look at one of those later on in the show today and see what the people come up with. Now, we categorically condemn any kind of abuse, any kind of oppression, misogyny, slavery, violence. These are all things that we do not like. In fact, we are entitled to hate them, because hatred is just another emotion, and I think we are allowed to feel hate towards these things. We do embrace free speech and criticism, factual and constructive criticism, unless there are some limits what we try not to do and what we don't do. But in all, we're just trying to be decent human beings. We're just trying to get along with people. And if you want to comment, question, correct, or you're curious, then you've come to the right place if you want to know something about the Quran. Don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Everything here is completely free of charge. So in other words, you don't have to throw money or anything. You can throw panties at us or bras or something, but not money. I'm sorry. Okay, we have different segments here on the Gin and Tonic Show. We always start off with some news. We start off with some Quran sentences, and today what I've inserted, we're bringing back, due to popular demand, of course, crazy comments, where we're going to go. I'm going to show some comments that I found made by Muslims, and some are actually quite good, okay, because there was, I don't know if you remember, there was an interaction between Dawah and me, and there were a lot of Muslims who were very, very angry with me that I managed to make Subur look a little bit stupid. But there were also some Muslims who were actually quite objective, and said, "No, hang on, why are you treating this guy differently than the others?" You know, so that's good news. Now, in the news, of course, everybody knows about Beirut, that there was a huge explosion there, killing hundreds and wounding thousands. And the problem I see there is that it's politicized. People are trying to use it. The ones are saying, well, you know, this is the bad government of Lebanon, that they are leaving things like that lying around unsupervised. Others are saying, well, no, this was the plan by the Hezbollah, who were planting the material there to use in bombs throughout the world. So there's different opinions here on what this, what was it, natrium chloride or something. What was it? I can't even remember. There was some fertilizer, which in powder form, I mean, you can do this with normal, flour. There are flour explosions because the particles are so fine that if there is sufficient oxygen and there's a spark, that gives a very violent reaction. And the same goes for this fertilizer. And we don't know why it blew up. We don't know what happened. But there are already groups trying to use it to their advantage, which I think is pretty sad. Instead of trying, and what I like is that a lot of countries are going and saying, all right, look, we're going to bring stuff there to move debris. We're going to bring medical equipment. We're going to bring a hospital ship. We're going to bring a lot of things there to help the people. Because at the end of the day, this is a catastrophe, and you need to help the people before you get down to making this into your own political advantage. At least I think so. So then we have Turkey doesn't leave us alone. Turkish Parliament passed a bill that gives authorities more powers to control social media. So the opposition party objected to the argument that legislation will lead to greater censorship in the using the argument that this will lead to greater censorship in the country, which is already quite rampant. And the law requires international social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook to appoint Turkish representatives. So that's quite sad, I think. All right, let me go and see if I can
Quick
find
one, Stops.
some-
Can I just
Yeah,
say
sure.
something here?
Oh, sorry. Does anybody else have something? Yeah.
No, well, it's just a comment on what you said, which is the whole thing about we don't attack, we critique. And I've asked this of many Muslims. I mean, you've spoken to probably thousands, and you and Thundress, maybe even Mustafa as well. You know, in the 3.5 years I've sort of spoken to Muslims, probably 300-400 I've spoken to. I haven't spoken to them all on this particular topic, but on the occasions when I do, I've probably spoken to 20, 30, maybe 40. And I ask them this whole thing when they say, oh, you're attacking versus critiquing. And I say to them, okay, so what's the difference? And at this point, I either get an entirely subjective opinion or some sort of gobbledygook that doesn't actually make sense. And I don't know if you guys have had the same, but I'd ask anybody, what's the difference between an attack and a critique? And what's your argument that I should accept your understanding of that? To me, it's all critique. You could say the worst things, it's still a form of critique. When does it become an attack? And why should I accept that? And I would encourage anybody to ask a Muslim about this and see what sort of, in my experience at least, rambling response you get that's entirely unsubstantive.
Well, also the word critique itself has developed over the years a very negative connotation too. Like it always, like even in normal language, it's becoming an attack when it's not necessarily the case. It's a critical analysis. It's just looking at all the elements and see if they measure up, or, you know, it's just analyzing, and people just misunderstand the word even criticizing itself.
Yeah, I think in my experience when it's happened, it's people start to, you know, Muslims in this case, start to get some sort of negative emotion, and then out of their mouth comes the word attack. Well, you're attacking. In actual fact, what's going on, if we had to break it down, I'm having a negative effect. I don't like it, and I'm going to call it something more than a critique because I'm, quote unquote, choosing to feel offended or feeling negative or whatever the case is. Okay, Mr. or Mrs. Muslim, but why should I, you know, as I think, what's his name? Stephen Fry says, so what?
Yeah.
So what that you're feeling that way? That's a choice that you can make to not feel that way, right? So
yeah, we've also mixed up Islamophobia, this weird term, and we kind of mixed it up with most anti-Muslim bigotry, when in reality these are just like criticizing Islam does not necessarily mean you're bigoted against Muslim or you're discriminating against Muslims. No, you're just attacking or criticizing an ideology which has nothing to do with Muslims. But Muslims, like even Haris Sultan said that, you know, they've just tied themselves so much to Islam that they can't separate themselves from Islam. So that's the unfortunate scenario that we see ourselves in.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot, right? We offer, and Stops has just said it in his intro, as he does every month, every week, I should say, that we're critiquing rather than attacking, whatever that nebulous term would mean, the ideology rather than the people. Now, if some people follow Muhammad's example, then yes, we're going to critique them as much as we would critique that, because they're following and doing what they otherwise wouldn't. Nobody gets born doing these things, so they learn it, they get brainwashed by it as they grow up. But it's certainly not a reflection on all Muslims. So, and we're at pains to say that regularly because of the people that don't like critique from people like us, want to claim we're some sort of Islamophobe, which is like a gobbledygook term anyway, so that they can dismiss our critique rather than address it. And on that note, thank you, Stops.
Also, attacking is blind, is emotional, whereas critiquing is intellectual, is more looking at the facts, looking at what it is that we're really doing, why we are doing it, giving it, you know, a bit of a more an academic ground, some sort of a thought process behind it, and not just blindly lashing out at something. This to me is the difference, the main difference that I see.
Yeah, but you have to look at the audience where the words are being used. Words have now been hijacked, so they don't have the same values or meanings or contexts that they perhaps did 15, 20, 30 years ago when words were used. You know, words mean things, and they certainly did do up until about 15, 20 years ago. Now words don't have the import or the meaning that they once did. You're now finding words hijacked. You're now using the words are being used for political gain. Words are being used for blame culture, being recreationally, if you like, attacked or looking to blame, or professionally looking to blame. And with Islam, the irony is, I think it's all these words are used in this way as a form of deflection. First of all, they're emotive when you use them in that context, because if you look at the psyche of the Muslim, the audience that listen, the audience of Muhammad Hijab, the audience of, say, Yasser Qadi, and so on and so forth, certainly the audience of Zakir Naik, they're not going to be critical in the analysis of words and how they're being employed. They're just looking at the emotional context of which they're being used with, which heightens their sense of injustice when they feel like Islam is being oppressed or attacked, when the reality is it's just being critiqued, as you've said. For me, the insult in all of this is when you read the Quran, the very source of attacking other religions in all scripture, in all the religions, the one that's more proactive in all of this is the Quran and Islam. It is the source of attacking all of the religions. You do not find in other religions or other texts proactive insults, proactive attacks, proactive threats against those who do not accept that faith pattern. Islam does that. So for me, it's like a form of deflection away from that. It's projection as well. It's projection and deflection.
Yeah, and I think what also the good thing that you brought this up in the news, additionally, what we didn't discuss last week was in the court in Peshawar in Pakistan, there was a hit, like a man just entered the court. There was a trial going on for some Ahmadiyya who claimed to be another prophet, and he was shot dead by this random Ghazi person. And now this Ghazi is being cheered as some form of a hero in Pakistan. And now it's also started this conversation. And you kind of see the holes in like the moderates versus the extremists. You kind of start seeing the holes. And, a lot of people are actually bringing forth verses and, hadith, specifically saying what particular groups should be following under an Islamic state. So we are at least started a conversation about this.
The interesting, just what I learned from that, and I was very grateful that you posted the link in the notes, that it reminded me of the if you like the fake Christian or the false Christian witch hunts during the centuries previous, say in the 15th, 14th, when they were chasing women just on the suggestion or the behavior or the allegation that there might have been a witch. So you have these high clergy coming in, throw them in a river. If they drowned, they were innocent. If they floated, they were guilty of being a witch, hence they were to be executed. And I'm finding now, because this escalation in apostasy laws is very much in that kind of vein, where a mere allegation, the Razia Bibi situation, for instance, was just a mere allegation. People died because somebody said something. It wasn't like a cartoon where there's some tangible evidence. It wasn't recorded, if you like, on a video or on some kind of mobile phone device that recorded the speech or the comment that was made. It was just one person saying something about somebody else. The emotions flared up, and that's where it all comes from. And I noticed in that since 1990, 74 people have been killed under the blasphemy laws in Pakistan. That's 2.5 people a year. And this is supposed to be the religion of peace. I mean, for crying out loud. That's just in, but can I just say, that's in Pakistan. We all know outside of Pakistan what has taken place in Somalia, in Nigeria, with the cartoons that were taking place in Denmark, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Ammonium nitrate, TDS Dave, thank you very much for the correction. Did you check why somebody sent a hit squad to Canada? No, nobody did. Okay, cool.
Hit squad to Canada. Did they?
Yeah, this was in the chat. So I thought maybe somebody had some more information about that. So yeah.
I've not heard of that as of yet. So That's definitely interesting news because I'm in Canada, so we haven't heard anything since morning.
Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go to crazy comments, which means I have to switch this on and go.
I've also got a couple
to...
stops, so I'll do it
Oh,
after
brilliant.
you. It's the same ones I sent you some while back. So if you aren't doing them, I'll add those in.
All right, can you read this?
Yep.
Now, this is an invite that was sent to a Facebook group on agnostic Muslims. I don't know, it doesn't make sense, agnostic, but anyway, it's a Muslim group where sometimes I go and I post something. And I got this invite. So it says, we are Muslim libertarians. Okay, the group was made for a purpose of trying Muslim liberty around the world. Together with bridge Muslims, learn about liberty and Islam. No matter your political ideology or religious beliefs, please feel free to join us in an open discussion. I did. The funny thing is, I didn't do much. Okay, what I did was, if you go and you look, these are their terms and conditions. Okay, I think this I have to go and how do I do these? There you go. So these are the group rules where they are saying, okay, anyone can find this group, and then it says, this is the purpose of the group. Join us in an open discussion, and then please take a moment to read the group rules. No bigotry, including but not limited to Islamophobia, racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and sexism. And then you get rules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This was crazy. And then, these rules are subject to change with or without notice. And then it says, I don't know how to, the banners. Does anybody know how to quickly turn off the names? Brand?
You want to take the names off so people can see it? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes. Here. Okay.
Oh, you got it there. Okay.
Found it, yeah. So it says at the bottom, if you feel that you are unfairly punished, you can appeal to the admins by privately messaging them, and maybe, with sound reasoning, you may be pardoned. Okay. Now, I applied and I joined. And then what I did, I said, well, excuse me, can you explain to me rule number 1? What is Islamophobia? And then people didn't like that. They took exception to me asking what Islamophobia is. And I said, well, I mean, if you're using something, and this is rule number 1, you need to know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they don't. They couldn't. They gave me some definitions, but they were different definitions. So they didn't even know themselves what this Islamophobia is. And I said, well, guys, wouldn't it be easier just to put there like anti-Muslim bigotry? Which would cover this, and this is exactly what you are trying to do, I think. Okay, so if anybody comes with reasonable arguments, yep, then you're okay with this. But don't go off and insult people, don't go off and attack people personally and things like that. This makes sense with the anti-Semitism and sexism and things like that. But don't put Islamophobia there. The next thing I did, a Christian came and said, well, what would you recommend in literature for somebody to learn about Islam? And they came with the usual, apologetic stuff. Until I went in there and I said, well, I think a book that is something that you should never forget is Bill Warner's Chronological Quran, the revamped version where everything is aligned to the life of Muhammad. And now somebody says, no, you can't do that. You can only read the original Quran. I said, well, number 1, you can't, because hardly anybody has studied, like the classical Quranic Arabic. So we are not equipped to read it. And to go and study an entire dead language just to read one single book, I think that's a bit steep. Now, here you have a book which gives you the contents of Islam. It gives you the reason why these sentences are there, which you can't see when you just read the Quran, because there's no structure. Yes, there's a structure. I said, there is no structure. Yeah, there is. You have a chapter 1 and you have a chapter 2 and you have a chapter 3 to 114. I said, that's not a structure. That's labeling chaos. And he says, yeah,
But I think, Stops, all you have to do is ask that person, come on the show like this, or what does this mean? Here's a verse. Do you know what this means? And you'll complete silence, or again, a bit of gibberish probably to fill in the silence.
And I did this, and I said, well, look, no, not really, but, this is why we have the Gin and Tonic show, so that people can ask questions exactly like this. Woof, I was gone, out, banned.
Wow.
So bad.
Really?
Yeah, but so bad that I cannot even find the group anymore. Okay, so this group to me is now invisible. I have to go and take a different ID so that I can even see this group. So I cannot see my old posts. I cannot see my old comments. I cannot see anything I have ever done in this group. It's as though I never existed there. So they really banned me from this group. They really hated what I did there. So I don't know. This is Dawah in action. When you really need some, and I have such high hopes because I think, Islam does desperately need a reformation.
But what is an agnostic Muslim anyway, right? So presumably these Muslims are like your quote-unquote progressive Muslims of some sort that don't, will probably shun the Salafists and so on.
Libertarian, but they're not.
Yeah, what does that mean to them, right? Libertarian is normally a political term. So, how's that relevant to them? But the fact that they banned you, or bring them on here, right? So these libertarians come on here and explain the Quran to us. And to me, and I think we've done this before, the Salafists have got a more straightforward interpretation that seems more plausible, unless you've got a lot of dancing to do to show us that no, some other weird interpretation is more plausible.
Correct. This is the funny thing.
Yeah, I even asked there was a Shia group that I was also part of on Facebook. Surprise, surprise, I got banned because I was saying, but this verse means this. And they constantly accused me of taking the Salafist route, that is. Like I'm taking the Salafist literalist route. I'm like, they do have a point. They really have a point, and they kind of know your scripture better than you do. So,
exactly. Like, what's wrong with that? Tell me, Mr. Agnostic Muslim, whatever that term is, because I think they misunderstand agnostic to mean to not have knowledge, whereas it's normally used as not as undecided, right? You're undecided on a proposition. So presumably, because otherwise I don't know what agnostic Muslim would mean. Hey, I believe God exists, but I don't know. Well, okay, but that's kind of superfluous, really. I mean, I think the term is wrong anyway. But you bring them on with a Salafist, and or bring them on with us, and we'll, do what you've just said, Mustafa, and say, hey, here's a straightforward interpretation. Why are we wrong? And let's look at the tafsirs. You don't accept that either, because they most likely align with what our interpretation is. So you're going to reject that as well?
Well, the funny thing is they actually went, one of the guys I knew, actually went and found my profile and found some of my videos. And he says, and he posted like 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And I said, and so what? Is there anything wrong with them? Is there anything factually incorrect? No comment, woof, gone. So this is Dawah in action. Okay. This was quite funny. I find it very funny when I hear or read comments from those so-called ex-Muslims. I left Islam. So what? Islam doesn't need you, but you need Islam. Well, I've got news for you, China. If everybody who is following Islam leaves Islam, there's nothing left. So it's very much the other way around. And if you leave Islam, why do you still speak about Islam and visit videos speak about Islam? That's exactly the point, because if somebody learns what Islam actually is, they feel compelled to share this information with others because it's the altruistic streak in them. They're trying to help others to get out of it.
Well, you get this a lot, right? People ask this sort of question of variation. I'm sure all of you guys have heard it, right? Why are you guys so obsessed with talking about Islam? Well, what's your definition of, excuse me, what's your definition of obsessed? And If you guys are claiming it's true, we're claiming it's not true. And if we suddenly stop talking about it, people are going to think that somehow, you guys have actually got something substantial to say, and all we have to do is critique it to show that you don't. So if you guys stop talking about it and you stop demonstrating it other than privately in your own homes, I think most of us would stop talking about it. But the fact that you guys don't means that we're going to continue critiquing it.
But now look at the number of the thumbs up.
409.
What channel was that on? Stops, you remember?
I
AC
can't
Dawah or
remember.
something?
I can't remember. But this was
But it's-
amazing. I thought 400 people have the same opinion. Come on, please, guys. There's something wrong.
And if
with
you had to discuss it with any one of those 409 or 410, including the guy speaking, you'd find that they would just, you put forward a straightforward position like I've just done, and I'm sure you guys would too, they wouldn't have anything to say about it. Because all I have to say to them, I'll stop talking about it when you do. When you stop demonstrating it to other people or claiming that it's true to other people, keep it to yourself and we'll stop talking about it. When you do that, we'll stop doing it.
And it's not only that, like there's also like when they get very, like you said, they get very preachy, and then they even portray a fact of like, oh, Muhammad did this nice thing, and you kind of think that didn't really happen according to the books written by your scholars. That mess didn't even happen. Like Muhammad was not a feminist. He was not anti-slavery. He was pro-slavery. And, he was kind of a warlord. That is based on the Seerah of Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham. So
He was a pirate, he tortured, he beheaded, he enslaved, he did all sorts of things.
But also,
And
we're
I
not
was-
saying that Muhammad was the worst guy that's ever lived. Well, I mean, maybe some people make that argument, but he did a few good things. But the claim is that he's the perfect example to follow. And all we need is one thing to show that that claim is false. If you just said he was an okay guy, we probably wouldn't, especially an okay guy or just a guy that lived in the 7th century, that wouldn't be too much. But you come in the 21st century and claim that he's the perfect example. Don't sit there and think that we're going to just mildly accept that. We're going to look and see whether that's the case. And we only need a few bad things to say that your claim is wrong. We can acknowledge
he's a
and
role
stops.
model.
We've done a show, right, however long ago, on the good things in Islam. Okay, it wasn't particularly long, but at least we've done one.
But the thing is, you see, we're all getting hung up in what Muhammad did that was good, and you're saying maybe a few things that he's done wrong, but you've only got to look
No,
at maybe
the other way
one
around.
thing, that he's done wrong to say, for instance, Aisha. Okay, is that not enough? Zainab. Oh, is that not enough? Slavery. Oh, is that not enough? Racism. Is that not enough? What about massacres? Or is that not enough? Okay, what about torture? What about killing critics? Where's the cutoff point for Muslims when they say he did good things? It's almost like they ignore the bad, but then they hear, oh, he may have sort of like took hold of a kitten and fed the kitten so the kitten didn't starve. It's analogous to saying that. Well, actually, even though Jimmy Savile did all these sex crimes, he's probably the most prolific sex criminal in UK's history, but he did good work for charity, so that's okay. Or
He
maybe
donated $1,000 to Médecins Sans Frontières, exactly.
So he or Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman helped an old lady across the road once. It doesn't matter. He happens to be the biggest serial killer in England's history. He did one good thing. I'm thinking that's the kind of logic and mentality you're dealing with, that they tend to shun away the bad that Muhammad did, ignore it, and narrow-blinkedly look at the good. And when you look at the good, which happens to be very minute, it's not proactive good. It's incidental good. It happened to be in that moment where he did something, and then my argument now is with Muslims. Well, when I'm quoting the hadith and you're saying it's fake, well, when you're telling me something he's did good and it's in the hadith, I'm just going to say that's fake too. So where's your cutoff point in all of this?
And there's the comment now that Stops has got there saying kind of pretty much that, right?
Yeah, but okay, this is actually a comment that would have matched with what Mustafa said, because now you're going to go to the scholars and you see what they say, and suddenly, if it doesn't suit them anymore, well, this is actually weak. And this is what Mansour says. Opinions of others are cited in Tabari. I mean, this is one of the main scholars in Islam, okay? But they are weak narrations. Each of the narrations used are shown side by side with the Arabic text, and the verdict, calculations, or opinions are his own views. And all
So
of
is
a
everybody
sudden,
else.
and all of a sudden, Tabari is not worth so much anymore if it suits you.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there was this thing that I made a video about why are there messengers? Because for me, this is one of the big logical failures in Islam, that God sends down people, and because they can't comprehend the message, he needs to send down messengers and prophets to teach people the full message and to make sure that they understand it. And I asked the question, well, why doesn't God only make messengers and prophets? Because then he doesn't have anybody that he has to teach something, and then you can have a test, because then they have the full message. Only messengers and prophets get this. So I went to one of these, question pages where they teach you about Dawah. And I asked one of these Dawah guys, can you answer this question? Why are there non-prophets? Now, this took 5 minutes. And then he came back and he said, I'm going to connect you with another agent. Someone will be able to help you with your questions. Another 5 minutes, poof, dropped call. They are not able to answer this question because it's a logical bankruptcy declaration. They can't answer this question. It's not there. So if anybody wants to catch out of us, that's all you have to ask. They can't answer.
My biggest thing was that why were the prophets only sent to the Middle East, that is, and why not anywhere?
No, they say they weren't. Every nation in
Yeah.
14:4, every nation got their own prophet. So, and there's another sentence in the Quran says no nation is going to be punished unless they got a prophet. And,
Yeah.
and this is the whole point. And this is why I said, well, then why do this?
Well, why, and not only that, why didn't the other nations record any prophets specifically?
Yeah, none.
Oh,
I've never heard
that,
of the Islamic prophet in Iceland.
we covered that. Remember when I did the thing
Yeah.
about the 123,999
Exactly.
prophets,
Yes.
and
And
we
that
worked
prompted me to do that. Exactly. This was
you know,
because I saw the logical conundrum there.
where we worked out from, because we used the Muslim genealogy to work out from Adam all the way to Muhammad, how many prophets that would have been per generation. That's assuming that you divide 123,909 per generation from Adam to Muhammad, or if you looked at the lifespan living not consecutively, one after the other. I forget what the word is for that. And given them only a lifespan of 40 years, would still have equated to 4.7 million years.
Yes. Wow. Yes. Now that you think about it, yeah, if you do that calculation.
So this Stops motivated me to do that, because Stops did several years ago the inheritance fractioned breakdown, and how the numbers don't stack, and that's what motivated me with Islam's genealogy, which isn't based on any credible writings. It's just made up. How the 123,909 prophets just does not mathematically add up. But that relates to other things as well. So yeah.
And of course, there are other logical. This is exactly what is in the chat now. Of course, why is it only in this region? Why is it only during this time? Why is it? Why? Of course, you can ask a lot of follow-up questions on this, and that they have no answers. Absolutely.
And Muhammad wasn't the only one who claimed the title of Seal of Prophets. There was someone called Mani who started this monarchism or something like that. He claimed to be the Seal of Prophets as well. I think he was born around the 300s. And I think someone before him was Malachi, I believe. So Muhammad isn't the first one, nor was he the last one to even claim the Seal of Prophets. We have the founder of the Ahmadi movement. He claimed to be the Seal of Prophets. So yeah, we have quite a few people who just claim that.
Yeah, there's plenty.
Yeah.
Then this is now going to the video that SC Dawah put out, where they say atheist stops spamming clashes with Sabur. This was not a clash, was it? So where I made the argument when they said, well, what is wrong? And I said, well, if you have the best of the creator, if you have all these claims in the Quran, if it's a perfect God, perfect creator, best of a creator, then I would expect that if this best of creator creates a hip, then one should be very much similar to the other one. So if I have two people living until the ripe old age of 80, and one hip already gives in after it's been running for 50 years, and the other one doesn't, and it goes all the way to 80, there's something wrong here. So this is a deficiency in the competence of the creator. And they didn't understand that. And now they are getting so desperate that this Yasfi Firman Shah says, when you compare two guys, one with broken hips, the other with normal hips, which one is better? That was my question. He says, better on what? If one with broken hips can reproduce more generations than the normal one, from the evolution perspective, the broken one is better.
Oh my
Can you believe it? But I think stops. I remember that. I remember listening to some of that discussion you had with Sabur, and there was some other guy, Tony, who kept jumping in there, who was utterly clueless. He'd be interesting because he claimed he was an atheist and he became a Muslim, and I'm always interested when it goes that way around.
No, he's
just
a Christian.
Huh?
This Tony guy is a
Tony-
Christian.
I thought he was the guy on that show when you were on.
Yeah.
There was some dude
Yeah.
called Tony. He was a Muslim
Yes.
because he was part of their group.
No, he is a Christian who was asked to stay on, and he's been stalking me for a while, telling me that I'm a Okay, I'm not going to repeat all the names because I don't have any idea about the flaws of abiogenesis. I said, look, I'm an atheist. This has nothing to do with abiogenesis.
But I think
Right. Yeah,
stops.
but-
But the other thing that I noticed in that discussion, right, is that, and maybe you did say it and I missed it, was checking what the argument is for design. Because if their argument is that they have a perfect designer, or the designer himself or itself is perfect, then we would expect a perfect design unless there's some good reason to suggest not. And I
didn't
think
make that.
because Sabur ended up arguing that no, we shouldn't expect a perfect design, but he just didn't have an argument. He appealed to, and you then did a video on it, on who was the atheist guy? Rosenberg, appealing but Rosenberg is making the argument against design. So
Yes.
why Sabur is using him is just mind-boggling, right? Because otherwise what they're claiming is that you have a designer that's doing things that is suboptimal, but for what reason? So either your argument is, hey, it's designed because it looks so wonderful, or it couldn't have been otherwise, or it's likely that it wouldn't have come about through natural processes. Cool, that's an argument you can have. But if you then back off from that and claim, no, I'm just claiming that there's some sort of design, but it's not perfect. Well, how's that a falsifiable claim? Because you can just say it's designed. I could just say it's not designed. How's that a falsifiable claim? You've got to make an argument for why you think it's designed as opposed to not designed, and what's the hallmark of a design. So I think I might have missed it, but I don't think there was clarity there. So it ended up seemingly that they were arguing against you that no, it wasn't supposed to be a perfect design, but they never gave an argument.
But I never made the argument. I didn't want to go there because I know
Okay.
that there's a lot of contention there. I know that they have a lot of arguments against it. So I was avoiding it. So I was saying, no, I'm only looking at the claims made in the Quran. I did not want to go. I said, I don't expect perfection. I just expect that which works and is available, not expecting perfection. What is available, like one hip compared to the other? There I expect that it works, and it doesn't. And that for me is sufficient. I didn't even want to go to perfection. So anyway, so
I mean,
this
and
carries
Thunderous
on.
is here, right? The Christians have a way to say, well, okay, there was a fall and that's why it's like that. The Muslims don't have that. So for them,
They do.
I would press the point as to,
No, they have.
if you're claiming that we're designed, then why are we suboptimally designed? First, you've got to agree we're suboptimally designed. If you don't agree that, what's your argument that we're optimally designed when all we have to show is any body part that could have been more optimally designed, i.e. to last longer, to be better, whatever the case is. Again, unless you want to go and equivocate on what optimal means and say, well, okay, optimal means whatever I mean, whatever I want, or optimal doesn't mean what we all understand by it, which is the best possible in the scenario or circumstances. So
Yeah,
the Muslims,
well,
it's much more difficult for them to argue a not perfect design, isn't it?
Imperfect. Yeah, but
Yeah.
what I said is that an octopus has better eyes than we have. A cheetah can run faster. An eagle can fly higher, and blah blah blah. All these things, but this is not what I expect. I just expect that what is available to be working the way that it ought to be. But even that is not being done. So this is a total failure. This is the only argument that I was making. Because they were going, yeah, were you created? No, I was not created. And I said, well, here's the argument against it. I can't be created because if you look at the arguments, the claims made in the Quran, this doesn't work out in reality. That's all I was doing.
Yeah, it depends what you mean by created, right? That's the key point. What does creation mean?
Well,
If it
that's what
means
I
from
started off with.
existing material, cool. But then as a Muslim, you've just cut your feet off because there's a claim that the universe was created from nothing, kun vaya kun type
No,
of
no,
thing.
not the universe.
And so you can't.
Not the universe.
No,
Not
I
the
know,
universe.
but it
People.
depends what they claim creation means. Because if creation is simply a reformulation of existing material, then everything's created, right? Everything that reformulates is created. If they're not claiming that, and they're claiming that you've come from something, from nothing, and you want to claim creation ex nihilo, that's a special form of creation, isn't it? And that you'd have to
It's-
demonstrate.
Now they're
It
going
is a-
into the words again, where they're trying to argue against that no, this is not the case, but it is.
Go on,
But
sorry,
it is
somebody
gonna be-
wanted to speak there.
It is going to be touched tonight, partially, because when you look at the Quran's surah or ayah that we're looking at tonight, the whole Adam and Eve account's going to be in there. So the creation, I wanted to comment on that when we go through the ayah later on this evening about Adam and
Cool.
Eve, and
Okay.
because you mentioned it a moment ago, Rob, about the biblical narrative is to do with original sin. Islam doesn't have that. So that has to be brought into question into where we're going with the Quranic narrative this evening.
But Islam has this.
What does that got?
Yeah, it
Islam
doesn't.
has the
Okay, well,
original sin, where Adam and Eve are in the garden, and God says you can eat from anything, but not from this tree. And then Iblis told them that you can, because God is trying to keep you away from being conscious and intelligent, and so they ate it, and this is why they were banned.
No, but
Yeah, but-
okay, but that's different stops from the Christian view, which is that all men are fallen thereafter. So we would expect a suboptimal
Yes,
design
this is
under
different.
Christianity
Yeah.
that they don't have in Islam, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's finish these comments. I'm sure we can get to that.
Yeah, there's plenty. We need to move it a bit. All you could have said was Allah didn't promise perfection. The design argument would have been over, and that's I did. And oh, sorry, I left this one out. I'm a Muslim, but being honest here, the host is biased to shut Fred up, but not Tony and Sabua for the same terminology that was used, like silly and
Yeah,
that,
that's
because they
rare.
blocked me and chucked me, and they left Tony and Sabua in, even though they were using the same kind of terminology.
It's rare to get
So
sort of
there
an
are some
honest
fair
interlocutor.
people.
Yeah.
The imperfection is part of perfection. You see, there you go. Now you have it.
What?
There you have it. Yeah.
Yeah. Moose, you're sort of squinting at that one. I think you're muted there. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of an oxymoron. Imperfection is perfection. So
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
contradiction. Yeah. But we get a lot of that. Don't worry, as you know, anyway.
Drop dead, Fred. You've successfully debunked your own arguments.
Like you wonder if they
Okay.
were listening, right? You do wonder if anybody was listening. I think what happens, Stops, certainly in my experience anyway, is as long as their side of the fence is saying something, it could be complete gibberish, they might not even understand, but as long as it's said with some level of certainty, they will think the other interlocutor has been debunked. If you ask them what specifically was debunked, you won't hear a peep. But it was debunked somehow because my man sounded like he knew what he was talking about.
And this is a typical strawman here. Just because you cannot explain how life originated, it means there's no God. Now, number one, I never talked about this. And number two, no, it does not. So nobody is making that claim. So you are addressing something that nobody says, and instead of arguing the points that are being made. So that's the traditional definition of a strawman. I mean, if God really creates life, earth, how the heck are we, finite being with lack of knowledge, are supposed to understand miraculousness, divinity behind God's creation using science or logic? Well, that's exactly it. Science is
Very
the study
easy.
of story?
Sorry? No, carry on.
Science is
I'll
the
tell you
study
at
of natural and physical laws. Anything that's supernatural is not the realm of science or logic. So you're looking at it using the wrong lens. And that's exactly
Okay, but
it. I
the
didn't look
question
at
is so
this.
easily answered. Obviously, you're right. It's a straw man. No atheist claims that because we don't know where the origin of life is, that disproves a God. Of course, nobody's saying that knows what they're talking about. But if really God creates life, how on earth are we finite beings supposed to understand miraculousness? And the answer is very simple. He can communicate it to us, unless it's so complex or beyond our ability, in which case that reflects on him that he can't build us in such a way that we can understand it. Or the fact is he just didn't explain it or didn't explain it well enough. So the answer is all he has to do is explain it to us. And then hopefully in time, science would demonstrate what he said is true. And we'd all go, that is incredible. No human could have explained it like that. Science has precisely demonstrated that claim in the Quran. That is incredible. And
Or like
of course,
the
we don't
standard
get
thing
anything.
that science is limited. When I'm always saying, well, can you cook an egg with a hammer? No, you can't. So does that mean the hammer is limited? It's stupid. So, yeah. These atheists, the moment they can't win an argument, they start insults and avoid the content and deflect, which is an indication of them already lost the war.
The
This is projection.
irony of the statement is that I've seen that in Muslims, and to an extent even Christians too. I've seen that in mostly religious circles, that they
Exactly.
win an argument and then they start insults. And I'm like, and this is Facebook comments and YouTube comment sections are very good evidence of that.
Oh, goodness. Okay, then Sabur. Okay, Sabur can insist all day that Farid is embarrassing, but I'm not seeing that, at least not here. This is a more objective one. What I did see was the others insulting, deflecting, distracting, taking over everything he postulated. This is correct. I mean, come on. How many times did Sabur say, okay, I'll give you 1 minute to speak, and then
Yeah, I
I
remember.
barely got 5
And
words
interrupted you
out.
incessantly. Sorry, like I'm doing now. Sorry.
If religious adherents have a better working model of the universe, then show it. Exactly. Test it, verify it. Those proofs need to be there without tricky philosophical chicanery, and those evidences, okay, this is very weird, need more persuasive than existing model that's evolved with thousands and so on and so forth. So I'm going to cut this off because there's only 4 more. Fred is a gaslighting expert.
Yeah.
Please tell me what that is. I've heard it before. I just haven't had the time or inclination to look it up.
Yeah, so gaslighting is a term. Basically, like the origins of the term is that basically you accuse someone of something that they're not doing, and then the intention is to confuse them. It came from the play Gaslight, where the husband is kind of playing tricks on his wife. So he uses the gaslight and he turns it on and off, and the wife's like, "Why are the lights going on and off?" And the husband's like, "They're not going on and off. You're just going crazy." So that's where the the origins of the term come from. And the gaslighting is basically saying that they'll accuse you of being crazy even though you are actually being factual, and the intention is to confuse you. So it's a form of manipulation, that is.
Okay,
Great.
thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem.
So I'm an expert at this, you see.
All you're doing is asking questions, but hey, that's gaslighting. Okay.
Fred is definitely mad at his design. Like,
Begging the question, right?
this is a good one. I need to turn this off again. Shit. I just turned
I'll do it. You
on.
carry on there. Let me do that for you quickly.
No, done, finished.
Oh, you got it?
Muhammad
Okay.
Hijab, and now this is so great. I mean, Muhammad Hijab is a comparative religionist, political scientist, theological historian, author, and debater. He has published works in the philosophy of religion, political philosophy, and theology. He holds degrees in those fields, acquiring his BA in politics and MA in history, both from QB Uni of London, another MA in Islamic studies from SOAS Uni of London. He also, okay, now this is how an academic is. He has also underwent formal Islamic studies in Quran, Hadith, Usul, Arabic language in the Islamic seminary, the Shinketi Institute, which I looked up, doesn't exist. Hijab is currently doing further postgraduate research in applied theology. Now, can you believe this? Can you believe this, that this is something that people will say about him when he's a complete fool, he's a baby? And it makes it out like he's, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And this is the thing that is being said about his book, because there's a book which is hilarious if you read it. Okay, and the last one, this is hello, Dr. Mohammed.
Oh.
I did not know this. I did not know that you are. This is why I laughed. I did not know that you are going to come up with this. This was part of my playlist for today.
Oh
So
my
this,
word.
this is a brilliant coincidence, isn't it?
All he has to do is test it. That's a falsifiable claim. It can either be confirmed or falsified, and he's the perfect guy to test it. Get coronavirus, confirm you've got it, take it, and if you're cured, and we can test it on other people, and it works every time, you've got the answer. I'd drink it if I was, if I was in coronavirus, even if I wanted to puke it out. If I was ill, I'd take whatever it is, hopefully without too many side effects to survive.
Well, the thing is, on that alone, yeah, Asima Hakim, which is one of the big scholars for dollars who appears regularly on Peace TV, he actually did, and I downloaded it. It's one of those things I'm going to do on my YouTube channel, upload bizarre Muslim statements, the official line. He actually did an article on the benefits of drinking camel urine. And he was talking about, as they do, he came out with some anecdotal story about of a friend of his who had stomach cancer that was incurable. The doctors couldn't do anything with it. Drank camel piss. Byproduct is he's now healthy. Now we all know that that's a lie and it's not true. But the argument that Islam puts forward on this, though, is that in Western medicine there is an extraction or a fraction of a hormone found in horse urine, which is used to treat women to go through a menopause. I forget what the hormone is now, but the thing is, you see, that's not what people don't understand is when Muhammad said drink camel urine, he basically said go up to the vagina or the penis of a camel, because he didn't name the sex. When it's urinating, take a cup, let it urinate in the cup, then consume the urine. I don't know if there was a fridge situation, so you could drink it cool in the hot day's sun, but you would have been consuming raw camel urine.
Oh.
What happens in Western medicine is the urine of the horse is taken. It's what's known as broken down in fractions. To illustrate, if you make a cup of tea, you've got water, you've got sugar, and you've got the essence of the tea bag inside there. What you can do, though, is break down the tea. You can take oxygen and hydrogen. Those are two of the composites of a cup of tea. You've got fats, you've got sugars, and the other chemical equations that make up sugar, and obviously the tea bag. That's what's known as fractions, when you break down the chemical elements within a product. That's not the same as what Muhammad prescribed, which is the going up to the drink of the water. So the argument is faulty when a Muslim uses that when in comparison, when trying to defend Islam and the drinking of camel urine, because Muhammad said so, in comparison to Western medicine techniques, which use fractions, totally different.
Yeah. Okay. Let me do a couple quickly stops, just two of them, and then we can move on. So here we go. Because it was talking about what you talked about, right? Oh, let's close that for now. So this is Muhammad Hijab speaking on Twitter to Apostate Prophet. Because Apostate Prophet is saying here, last call, I challenged Muhammad Hijab to a debate, etc. Hijab says, there is a minimum requirement to debating me formally and moderated settings, which usually include having a minimum level of training or qualifications in the subject area you wish to debate. You do not meet this criteria. You are welcome to have an informal chat. Now, it does strike me that he should be talking about himself here, and maybe he got mistaken with Apostate Prophet. But that entire small paragraph certainly applies to him directly, because he has, quote, debated or discussed things on which he is so ignorant it's unbelievable. Even children in high school would be better educated.
But now hijab is being professed as being or being held as the new Zakir Naik. Who do we know in Islamic scholarly works who claims to be a great debater makes such ludicrous demands before he debates anybody? Actually, did I say before he debates anybody? Who makes ludicrous demands so that if anybody wants to debate him, they have to meet that criteria, otherwise he won't debate them? Which means the demands are so big, nobody can ever meet him anyway. Hence, he will never get a debate. Who do we know that does that?
Have you not seen the latest commentary between Ridwan and Dr. Wood?
Yeah. Oh,
where
No, I can't say we have.
this is now the new term, the new name,
yeah.
because Muhammad Hijab was in this chat. And he is now being called Mo, the golden shower hijab, because this is what he was propagating in the chat. Why doesn't Ridwan kneel down and get David Wood to pee on him, to get the golden shower? This is the level of Muhammad hijab. So this is
Yeah,
why
I think we
Ridwan
all
said
know.
he's now Muhammad the golden shower hijab.
Yeah, I think we all know that. Go on.
I'd question what pornography Mohammed Hijab's been watching, if that's what he's suggesting.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that he's not an honest or a substantial interlocutor. And even on one of the calls you were on, Stops, he did say he was an actor. And I think that's probably
Yeah,
one
he
of the
told
few
me.
times that I would agree
He
with
told
him.
me, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
told
So
him, if
that
you
was
can't
on
do your
live. If
clown
you go
act,
look
you're
it
not
up.
happy. He says, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get the BAFTA or the Oscar.
Yeah, yeah. Let me do the last one and then we're done here. Otherwise, we could spend all day on it. So here's the other one. Oh, let me see if I can change that. Sorry. As soon as you click on the next one, there's no way to move this forward or backwards. Sorry about that.
But he's now running around insulting him, by the way, because now he's backing down. Because, of course, he knows he's going to be owned.
So here's the other one. This was when Sabur was speaking to Preston, who speaks online
this
as
is a
well,
classic,
but goes
yeah,
down to the
yeah.
park. He's kind of some sort of spiritual guy. He's not a Christian, but he's not a Muslim, but he's not an atheist. So he's kind of, but so they were having a conversation. Subhana Allah, mashallah, the brother speaks things down to such simple terms and made it so simple. I don't know if he was speaking about Preston. I'm sure he couldn't have been speaking about Sabur. I thought this brother was supposed to accept Islam by now because Preston goes and asked him. Preston, stop delay, haha. You're always listening, always asking, but it stays with just that. Bring in the action. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you. So thank you very much. That's all I'll do there. So it's these guys, whenever there's a conversation with any of these guys that have sort of been hyped up a little bit, if you asked him what specifically was simple, that's all we have to ask anybody who follows these guys sort of religiously, if we can use that term. Well, what was it that he said that was simple and substantial that you think constitutes something that nobody can argue against? Just ask a question like that to any of these Muslims and you'll barely get a coherent response, never mind a substantial one.
All right. Should we go to the next segment,
Go for it.
which is... Okay, this is going to be a tough one, all right? This is going to be about chapter 7. So let me just go here and share this with you. So chapter 7 has different translations. The Araf, which is the battlement, purgatory, ramparts, heights, war between heaven and hell, bridge across hell. And there's a whole lot of things that this word can mean, which makes it, this is the typical problem with Arabic, with Quranic Arabic, the ancient classical Arabic, that it's so vague and ambiguous. There's very little that you can put your finger in and say, this is the way that it is. It's never clear. It's never unambiguous. And I said it's a problematic chapter for several reasons, because Arafs is a curtain, a high wall, a hill between hill and paradise. Now, according to Ibn Abbas, it's a balcony surrounding the minaret. I don't know if you've seen this. Up on the Sirat bridge, which is thin, straight, and sharp, will be laid across hell with God's command. And then men, or the companions of Al-Araf, can be angels, people, they can be righteous, or they can be martyrs. And then the way that it works, you have to work out which is good and evil works of equal quantity. How does that work? How do you balance this? And how are you, if you are on this bridge, how can you be in limbo? So there are different things here. In Mecca, this is now an explanation that I found. So if we go to the chapters 46 and 48, in sentences 46 and 48 in Araf, then the border between hell and paradise, not less than 165, but 206 sentences. Now, remember the previous was 165, chapter 6. And all of a sudden we have 206. So it's longer than the one, not shorter. Then a greeting is given to the people of the book to become Muslims. Jews and Christians to become Muslims, a greeting. Then an admonition is given to the unbelievers about the results of their disavowal through referring the case of punishments which are caused upon previous nations for their off-base mentality toward their rasuls, their messengers. And then in this chapter, the Jews are cautioned about the results of their deceptive lead towards the prophets, the precept to proliferate the message of Islam with astuteness, the fact that the messengers are just as the individuals to whom they are sent, will be addressed on the day of judgment, and conversation between the inhabitants. Okay, this is the funny thing where you can actually go and watch the people in hell suffering. So if you die, you will see your father, who is not a Muslim, in hell, and he will be screaming out to you, give me a glass of water, give me something to drink. And you will look at him and you will say to him, Dad, you've had your chance. I'm not going to give you a glass of water because you deserve the punishment. And this is wow.
How many
this is
people would
quite-
do that unless they had a father that beat them or was a terrible father?
Yeah, exactly.
And even
Anyway, this is what you see in this chapter. Then luxuriousness and difficulty are the reminders from Allah. Muhammad is Rasul.
Stop. I think Mustafa wanted to say something.
no, even with abusive parents, you still have a very
Thunder,
soft.
can you mute your microphone? You're getting feedback again. Thanks.
Yeah, so even with abusive parents, you still have a very soft spot for them. Even if they ask for something and they're kind of suffering, you'd still help them out because there's still like that biological and emotional connection still. So even if they were abusive, so this is kind of like ludicrous if you ask me.
Yeah, it is. I think it's, number one, very selfish. Number two, callous. Totally. Okay. So, Muhammad is the Rasul for the entirety of humankind. Really? The fact that the coming of Muhammad was depicted in Torah and the Gospel. Well, was it? No.
Where?
Then you have the Jews have fabricated a wrong belief about Allah's creation. The humankind's declaration about Allah at the hour of Adam's creation. Allah made all humankind from a single soul. And how Satan made our ancestors, Adam and Eve, to leave heaven. And all of the three came down to earth. And from that point, Satan became number one enemy for humanity. Allah's command to show forgiveness, speak for justice, stay away from the ignorant. And finally, in this chapter, Allah's order about tuning into the recitation of the Quran with complete quietness. Now, why do I call it problematic? Well, I think men, or the companions, I don't know what they are. Anyway, let's go and take a look at what it says. And Thunderous, I know that you went through this, so if you have any comments, or do you want to take this from here?
No, I'll let you carry on, and then what I'll do is the verses I want to discuss. There was a few, but I think I'm just going to concentrate in one section from verse 11 onwards.
Okay, so number one is one of these single letter sentences, one of the 29, ALMS. And I've asked a Muslim, do you know what guidance this is? And he says, yes, I understand it perfectly. I said, no, you don't. Why are you lying?
Well, what does it say? Just ask you, what does it mean?
Yeah.
And how do you know that that's
says,
what it means?
You wouldn't understand. You have to be a Muslim to understand this.
Yeah,
Can you not explain it? Isn't it supposed to be for all people for all time?
Yeah, so it says here, it's basically the letters Alif, Lam, Mim, Sad. And I've even asked some of my fellow Muslims back when I was Muslim, and the most common response is, only God knows.
Yes, Allah knows best. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't know if there's a message in there. Because the book was sent down for humans. It wasn't sent for Muhammad to put in, sneaky things that nobody can understand. And even if there's some ambiguous verses, this is not even ambiguous. This is totally unknown. So even if a Muslim came with a claim, which they do nowadays, of course, maybe they always have, but certainly these days, hey, he sent some clear verses and he sent some ambiguous ones. If I want to send a message to you, am I going to send you some clear ones and some ambiguous ones and some that are unknown, and then judge you and punish you if you don't follow this unclear parts of the book? I mean, that's just ridiculous, right?
And
But again, when I put this to
Allah
Muslims, I
loves
get all
making
sorts of.
slaves. ALMS. Allah loves making slaves.
yeah, and then there's the very recent amongst the Shia circles that I've heard is that it stands for Ali, Allah, and Muhammad. That is, and I'm like thinking, but then there's other letters too. What the hell do they mean? And at the same time, the letters don't match up, and the fact
HM.
that yeah,
My
so
favorite.
But how do they
my
know it,
favorite sentence in the
Mustafa?
Quran, 41:1, HM.
yeah, and yeah, HM basically. There's that one, and then there's also the problem. There, I kind of see that idea coming from an extinct Shia sect, which believed in a form of a trinity between Ali, Allah, and Muhammad. That is, so that might have been where the idea was floating, but again, there's no evidence for that.
Okay. Number 2, this book is to warn non-believers and remind believers. Okay, of what? Well, we don't know. Number 3 is just simply obey. Okay, just for some people who don't know this, what I do is I take sentences from the Quran, which are like very, very long, and I try and percolate it. And I take the essence of the sentence, and this is what I bring out. I try at least. So if somebody reads the sentence and says, yeah, but that's not what it says. No, it's not what it says. But this is the I don't know, the germ or whatever that is contained, the seed that is contained in this sentence. Number 4, we committed genocide. This is what God says about himself. We committed genocide. And he seems very proud of himself too, because they admitted their guilt. We will question people and their messengers, which is going to be dozens of this all-knower, because in 26:220, you will see that they are full knowledge of everything. So these messengers are all knowers. Why would you question the messenger if they are all knowing? Doesn't really make sense. And in 7 it says, we will tell them since we were always there. Now in 8 it's quite funny. Heavy is successful and light is loser. I don't know how the Quran does this, but that's how they go and do that. So number 10, we established you and provided income. Rarely are you appreciative of what we have done for you. And then 11 says, we created you and told the angels, bow down to Adam. They did, except for Iblis, which is Satan. So there's a whole lot of history behind this, what happened here, and why it says bow down to Adam, and why Iblis didn't, because he said it to the angels, and Iblis did not consider himself to be an angel, so he did not. And then he says, why should I bow down? Because you created me from fire and created him only from mud, so I'm worth more than this human guy. Now, we get to a very funny thing, because in chapter 12, in chapter 7, sentence number 12, it says, he said, why? So this is now the devil. And then it says, and they're all using kala, which is the same. If you look at, I looked it up because I couldn't believe it, but it is, the Quran is using the same word every single time. He said, you are arrogant, so get out. He said, give me until end of time. He said, okay. He said, since you duped me, I will lead humans astray. I will deceive them so that they are ungrateful. He said, get out, and I will fill hell with those who follow you. Adam and your wife can stay, eat all, this is the story, except from this tree. They had, and now I don't understand all this he said, how anybody can get away with it and still say, this is eloquent. This is so perfect. Now, I do not know if this is due to the rhyming. I don't know if in Arabic this makes sense. But for me, this is like totally nonsensical. And then Adam and your wife can stay. They had invisible bodies. So Satan tricked them into eating from the forbidden tree. And he said, I'm giving you good advice. He tricked them and their bodies were visible. God called them and asked, what did I tell you? Well, you should know. And they said, oops, so sorry, boss. And he said, well, go down to earth as enemies and live there for a while. Now, enemies, I think, means enemies between Satan and the people, something, but not between Adam and Eve or something. And go and live there for a while. I don't don't know how long this while is. In godly terms, must be a long while. So he said, you will live and die and be brought out, whatever that is. Children of Adam, whatever that is, you have garments, but the best garment is righteousness. Signs. Children of Adam, don't do what your parents did. He and his tribe see you, but you can't see them. They are companions of those who don't believe. I mean, this is crazy. Thunder, go.
Yeah, sorry, I think Mustafa wanted to say something first. Did you want to say something, Mustafa?
Oh, no. Go ahead. No.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, you really have to look at sort of like verse 11, where it says here in the Yusuf Ali translation, it is we who created you and gave you shape. Then we said to the angels, bow down to Adam, and they bowed down. Not Iblis. He refused to be one of those who bowed down. So what questions do we ask here? Well, for starters, angels don't have free will. If you train 100 dogs to bow down to you when you walk into a house, would that make you feel any kind of like privilege or any esteem or anything like that? No, you would not get any joy or satisfaction from that when you've trained certain creatures that are only acting on instincts and do not have free will, that are merely following a command. That's one thing. Second of all, why are they being asked to bow down to Adam? If Adam is a creation, then a creation after the angels, then why would the angels be commanded by Allah to bow down to Adam? Then you have to ask the question then, what intelligence did Satan have for him to recognize that he should not bow down to Adam? Why would he disobey the command of Allah in order to not bow down to Adam? So these, I mean, for me, I looked at it and I thought, that's got to be shirk. At some point, there's got to be shirk in there somewhere. Verse 12, Allah said, what's preventing you from bowing down? When I commanded you, he said, I am better than he. You created me from fire and him from clay. Yet again, it's we've discussed this several times over the years about the Quran is just full of applying physical attributes to the spiritual dimension. Now, if you're using fire, that's a product of something being combusted. So what was the object that Allah combusted in order to get the fire? Then he's talking about clay. So there must be oxygen in this dimension where Allah created things. There must be combustible objects because there's certainly clay. And this is all taking place in the spirit realm. Now, I'm going to preempt this. This could be a miracle of the Quran. I don't know, because the Quran is full of scientific miracles. And the closest thing a Muslim can try and make sense of this for me to understand is this the promotion of the multiverse theory? I don't know, make of that what you will, but I've tried to make sense of this, and the only thing I can come to, this could be a prophecy of the finding of the multiverse. But the thing is, in other previous religions, well, the multiverse theory, I am putting that forward for the Muslims as an explanation, because you'll find it physical attributes in a spiritual dimension. No other text has ever tried to reinforce physical attributes in a spiritual dimension. In fact, when you look at the Judeo-Christian narrative, they mock the idea of applying physical attributes to the spiritual dimension. Elijah did that at Mount Carmel. Then it goes on in 13. Allah said, get down from here. It is not for you to be arrogant here. Get out, for you are of the meanest of creatures. Okay, so Allah's telling Satan to get out. Where was he going to go? If heaven in the spiritual dimension is one location, where was he going to go? So that would mean that Allah would have had to have created Earth at some point, but Allah doesn't mention he created Earth and what order the creation sequence is. So why would a spirit creature be sent to the physical realm? That doesn't make sense. 14, he said, give me respite till the day they are raised up. How would Satan know at this point in time in the Quranic Islamic recension that God has an appointed time in order to judge, and Satan's asking for that respite? Where is
good point. Yeah,
very good point.
So how would he know to do that? Was there in heaven, when Allah created Adam and Eve, was it preordained and that he shared this information with Satan? Clearly not, because that information is not there. Verse 16, where am I now? 16. He said, because you have thrown me out, of the way. I will lie in wait for them on your straight path. How would he know that God's intention was that there was going to be a test, that he's going to try and trip them up? How would Satan be aware of this? So you have to ask the question, what's being said here and why? And how did Satan, the Quranic recension, get this information in order to challenge Allah in this legal way?
And then
70.
the other way around, you need to ask the other question. If God has knowledge of all things, why didn't he
Absolutely.
know that when he created Iblis, this will happen, that there will be a challenge, so that why didn't he create human beings to be oblivious or immune to what this Iblis is going to tell them? You know, there's so many
Absolutely.
logical questions here.
Absolutely. I mean, verse 17 says, then I will assault them from before them and behind them and from their right and from the left. Nor will you find in most of them gratitude for your mercies. This is a clear plagiarism of the book of Job. Clear plagiarism.
It's only the. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
In 18, it says in one translation of, I'm using the Yusuf Ali translation now. I was using another one earlier. I think it might have been, what's the other one? Pixel. In 18, it says, get from here, you are disgraced and expelled. If any of them follow you, I will fill hell with all of you. In the other translations, it uses the word Gehenna.
Mhm.
So I'd like to know, what is the Arabic translation of that they're using, and why have they concluded to use the word Gehenna in some translations? Because that shows an ignorance on the part of the translator. If anybody knows anything about Judeo history, Gehenna was a rubbish tip located outside Jerusalem. It's where people used to throw their refuse. And one of the things they did with Gehenna was throw dead bodies of criminals in there. So why is Allah, or why are translators using the word Gehenna when in reality it was a physical rubbish tip outside Jerusalem? Where are we now? 19. Oh, Adam, you and your wife dwell in the garden and enjoy of its good things as you wish, but do not approach this tree or you will turn harm and transgression. But it's not explained why that's the case. It's just a case of don't eat that tree. There's no explanation as to why they shouldn't eat from that tree. No
And why the
explanation.
tree's there in the first place?
Yeah, I maybe, and I'm going to be generous here. I'm going to be absolutely, because I don't want it to be said of me that I only mock Islam and attack Islam and that I don't do anything to try and do some apologetics for Islam. Possibly, this could be argued that it was a demonstration of their free will. Without law, there is no free will. Without free will, there is no law. So the tree demonstrated, if you like, their free will of obedience or disobedience. I will be generous with them on that. Verse, where are we now? There was so much to written down. Then verse 19 and 20. Then Satan began to whisper suggestions to them in order to reveal to them their shame that was hidden from them. He said, your Lord only forbade you this tree, lest you should become angels or such beings as live forever. Well, the question I'd ask is, if Adam and Eve didn't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad in Islamic parlance is concerned, when were they going to die? Isn't that not a good question?
Very good question. Like,
So what's the difference between living forever and having everlasting life? I know the difference between everlasting life and immortality, but if Adam and Eve didn't eat from the tree in Islamic parlance in heaven, when were they going to die? Surely they'd still be alive now. That would be the logical conclusion. So there was no need for them to eat the tree, eat from that tree. And surely Adam and Eve would have had the intelligence not to eat from the tree because they would have been aware that they'll have had life everlasting anyway. Yeah? And I want us to bear in mind, I could go on and dissect this, but I just wanted to conclude on this because I don't want to hog up the time. Because I think enough has been said. But want us to bear in mind this, the hadith that was brought out about Adam and Eve being 90 foot tall.
Oh, yes.
Right? So when they are kicked out of heaven and gone on to earth, many Muslims will turn around and say, well, they were 90 foot in heaven. Well, first of all, how do you measure things in heaven? It's not a three-dimensional or four. We live in, some say four-dimensional, some five-dimensional. Let's not argue about how many dimensions we live in. Let's just stick with the four that we know, right? That you can measure 90 foot in this realm, but if you're in another realm which is multi-dimensional, how do you measure things there? How do you get to 90 foot? And how would Muhammad have known this? So it has to have been that when they were sent to Earth that they were 90 foot. And second of all, the hadith that says Adam and Eve were 90 foot, it says human beings have been gradually descending in size. Well, children of Adam and Eve were given birth in the physical realm on Earth, not in Allah's heaven. So that decreasing in size can only have ever taken place on Earth. And for those who are interested, I did an article on that as well on the Gin and Tonic show, where we counted from Adam all the way to Muhammad, asking where's the evidence of fossil records of 90-foot human beings. Where was 90-foot Eve's burqa? Where was her hijab? Where were the tools, the pots and the pans? What did they eat? But also we did a mathematical thing where we broke down the generational size difference, and we were being generous when we say, well, each generation shrank by 5 foot. And if you use the Islamic chronology of Adam all the way to Muhammad, Abraham at the 5 foot decrease rate per generation would have been 40 foot tall.
Wow.
Muslims, can you please give me an answer to this? I'm awaiting.
Yeah, and this story, that you mentioned of, you also mentioned like it was a ripoff of Job, but then there's another book that this story rips off of, is The Life of Adam and Eve, which was sort of like a between Old and New Testament kind of, I don't know if it was literature of that particular time. And if you notice Genesis, the devil's not there. It's a serpent. Apparently in Genesis, you have a serpent who's tempting Adam and Eve. So it wasn't until like the book of Revelations where the author of that book ties in the serpent with the devil. And not only that, the word was originally, I think, the Hebrew term was the Satan or Hasatan, or the accuser, that is. And I think you mentioned the book of Job. He was part of the Celestial Council, and he's sitting in the Celestial Council, and they, God and him, have like a little chat, like the old buddies, and then they have a bet. And that in itself is a very funny story. Definitely a book I would recommend is the Birth of Satan. It's a very it actually examines the biblical history and when the term was used for a human, like for a person who's a human, and then the term that's used for the celestial being, that is. And then it's a slower process of like it just being a word to like an agent of God, and then eventually it became a separate entity. And the Quran ran with this story as well, 600 years, 700 years maybe later. So so the Quran is just like that final, like okay, this is how everything ended up, and it just shows what people believed at that particular time. So so that was one of the reasons why I started doubting religion, because that's when I saw that Satan itself was just a fabrication, if anything, of a particular writer, however he felt like, depending on the time period.
Yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies there, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And if you look at the old stories, there's a lot in the Gilgamesh epic, and there's a lot of other places where we can see the copies. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even the
All
mud
right.
clay, that's from Gilgamesh. Like humans being made of mud and clay, yeah.
All right, we're not going to have much time today for the video, so let's just see how far it will take us. And as usual, if you're in the chat and you want me to stop, just type in 111 or something, or one enter, so I can see it. And if anybody here wants to say something, just go and shout stop.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome
Can everybody hear this?
Yes, we can hear this.
to a new video. And this one,
By the way, this guy is this Farid joke, okay? I mean, if you write anything as a comment on this video, immediately you're blocked. I mean, there's no way that you could get any kind of criticism out there. And he's incredibly arrogant, even though he doesn't really have any kind of knowledge. And the funny thing is, both Yasakadi and Shabia Ali and Akhan, everybody else, they just laugh about him. They mock him because he has this very funny way of talking, and everybody's
I'm going
mocking
to
him.
be doing a practical examination of the 10 qira'at, specifically in Surah Al-Fatiha, since it's what like Muslims recite multiple times each day.
Yeah, I don't know. I did this a couple of weeks ago where I explained Kirat and all this stuff. We're talking about the fact that Yasekadi said that there are holes in the narration that Muslim scholars cannot explain. We're talking about the different versions of the Quran where you have not only different versions like the Hafs or the Wash or something, but you have really different variants. And we've had Dr. Daniel Brubaker now come out and give us some examples of what these do look like, what the corrections are, what the additions are, what the deletions are, and all these things. So we have a lot of factual evidence. I mean, I did this in a video, I don't know, like 10, 12 years ago, where I showed the different variants, the different versions of the Quran. And what he is doing, he is saying, well, we have Kirat, we have the different recitation versions where there are 7, or rather there are 10, but then you have 2 per them, so you have 14 or 20. And in the end, when you add all the different versions together, you have 26 or something official versions, because there is a hadith somewhere which says, and I'm not sure if it's Da'if or if it's, I think it's Da'if actually, which is valid, but it's not Sahih, it's not authentic, it's weak, which says that Muhammad said that all these versions were released by Allah Himself, all the 7 different dialects, so that people in the different tribes would understand them, which is absolute bullshit, because Arabic in this form did not exist at the time. So the Quran came with a new language that was codified in the Quran. So to have different dialects in the Quran that codified Arabic is actually quite stupid. But this is the way that it is, and he tries to deflect by going from the different variants into different dialects. In other words, the way that I will say years because I'm South African, and somebody else will say years or years or whatever. There's a different way of pronouncing different words. And he is saying this is just a matter of pronunciation. Of course it's not. But this is what he's trying to do. And he's saying, well, this word is this and this word is that. And so this is quite funny, actually.
And I'm going to be exploring each of the multiple recitations, explaining the origins of these recitations, and most importantly, explaining why these are not mistakes. Now, it's important to keep in mind that what are ahruf and what are qira'at, right? So, first of all, what you need to know is through mutawatir reports, there are multiple mass transmitted reports from Rasulullah ﷺ that says that the Quran was revealed in 7 modes. You'll find this in any book of hadith. This isn't something that David Wood just discovered, guys. This is something that's been taught since day one in Islam, right? And basically, Rasulullah ﷺ had the Quran revealed to him in 7 modes to make the Quran easier to recite, and we're going to get to that.
So this grade, if you saw this, was Hazan. So there are different grades, and we've been through this on the show in previous episodes. So there are different levels. I'm not going to go through all of them. So one of them is, the second one is the Hazan, which is reliable but not 100% as so either the isnad is broken or the contents is a little bit variant, and this is why they're not sahih, which is totally authentic, but one grade below that. Sorry, Mustafa?
Yeah, I was just saying Hassan or Hassan Sahih, some grades use, and then below that are, the Daif and Mawdu. That is, so Sahih is the highest.
Now, what are the qira'at? The qira'at are not the ahruf. The qira'at are basically a combination of the ahruf, of the 7 modes. So basically, if you hear half the Quran in mode 1, and the other half in mode 2, and then you recite it in that manner, then you have qira'ah X. I hope it's not too confusing, but that's basically the idea of what a qira'ah is. It's just basically a combination of the modes. So carrying on, the first proof that these qira'at are intentional is that
Okay, this is where I need to laugh because now, you see, he's smuggling in words. Um, this is to comfort other Muslims. He's talking absolute shit, okay? But he's trying to make this sound as though, yeah, you see, this was all intentional. This was all intended by Allah. So there's nothing wrong here, nothing to see here. Move along, go away. There's nothing to see. Everything is perfectly normal. No, it is not. If a God says, I have the perfect book, then there should only be one version of this perfect book. If a God says that I am the best of all authors, I'm the best one to give you the guidance, this guidance should be clear. And it says, I don't know how many times, I can't remember, Sir Muhammad, Dr. Muhammad, I think you counted the number of times the Quran says it is clear, it is mubin, it is so many things. It is not. This is the whole point. Either it is reliable, either it is in one version, either it is complete and clear and without mistakes, or it is not. And what he is saying is, well, it was intended that the mistakes are there. You know, what we saw, the imperfection is part of the perfection. Yeah.
we know for a fact that Rasulullah ﷺ recited the Quran in multiple modes.
This is bullshit. We don't know for a fact that this is this doesn't mean that. What we know is what the hadiths tell us. Now that's all that we know. And the hadiths tell us, yes, there are different people who understood words differently, and they had different pronunciations for the different words. Absolutely. But this should not be the case, and it was definitely not something that would be intentional, because there should only be one Quran, but there isn't. And the different versions, I mean, the contents is very, very different. And the question is always, does the contents change with the different qira'at or with a different aruf? Now, the thing is, he says the aruf is just a combination. No, it's not. The funny thing is, Muslims themselves don't know the difference between the precise difference between aruf and qira'at. A lot of them use this synonymously. A lot of them get mixed up when they try and explain this. Even scholars still argue about which is what and what is being used in what way. So I don't know what this guy is trying to do.
That's the first thing. Secondly, historically, there's no doubt that the Qur'an existed among the Sahaba themselves. So is it possible the Sahaba completely forgot how to recite the Quran?
That is a possibility. That
Yeah, but
really
the thing is, you see, I'm looking at the tactic here. What he's doing is he's asking us, do you think it is possible? How the fuck should I know? You are the one that is giving out the claim. You are the one that should be giving out the evidence. You are the one that is saying this is perfectly normal. Well, then you bloody well go and show it. Don't come to me now and ask me to prove your point. Don't do that. That's ridiculous.
In one
But
generation, we're not
this is a PR campaign for Islam, though, so his audience are going to be majority Muslim. The majority Muslim are going to be ignorant. See, they're going to rely on him for him to ask them that question, because he knows their natural reaction is going to be no. He knows that. That's why he's asking the question, because he knows what the answer is going to be. And then he can continue, because what I wrote down was, because when he started using words like modes, I wrote down, sounds like trying to deflect, deny, cloud, and obfuscate the narrative.
Yes.
So he's using words in order to create a cloud, then ask the question. So when he's asked the question, he already knows we'll have the default automatic response is going to be from the audience that's going to be listening to him.
And not only that, isn't there a hadith that states that Caliph Usman, ordered the other versions of the Quran to be destroyed, and that he the dialect of the Quraysh, he said, write it in the dialect of the Quraysh to Zayd bin Sabit. Destroyed, burnt in bathhouses.
Yes, absolutely. And that weren't there only 9 Qurans written by Uthman?
Yeah, there was only 9 versions, and the other ones were destroyed.
Except for the ones where they have the the definite proof that this came from this century and this came down to the time of Prophet Muhammad, like the Birmingham ones, which don't. But it's as soon as they claim that, they don't know how they are tripping over themselves exactly because of your point. How is it possible that all these documents survived when they were apparently burnt? It doesn't make sense, does it?
We're not even talking about the Quran as a whole. At the moment, I'm just speaking about Al-Fatiha. Is it possible for these Sahaba to have completely forgotten how to recite the Fatiha?
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's something that's simply too hard to swallow. Keep in mind that not a single kid today would mess up reciting Al-Fatiha, let alone the first generation of Muslims.
What does that prove?
So,
Nothing.
in this video, I'm going to be going through the variants of the 10 recitations, and let's go through this together.
Hang on, didn't he just say 7?
Yeah, he did, I think.
So where does he get the 10 from? Didn't he just put a hadith on there where it says in 7 different modes? So all of a sudden we're talking about 10 already. So what is this? Magical interest or what?
Together.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحمن
Verse. The first word in the fourth verse is recited as Malik and Malik. As you can see in this awesome video, you have the recitations repeated for the same verse. So, as we can see here, it's recited as Malik by Warsh ibn Kathir, Abu Amr al-Basri, Ibn Amr, Hamza, and Abu Ja'far. So most of the 10 have recited it as Maliki Yawmiddin, right? While it's also recited as Maliki Yawmiddin, which is how Asim recites it and how Al-Kisai and Yaqub bin Khalaf, right? So the first question is, could this be a mistake? And it's pretty much impossible for this to be a mistake again because it's Al-Fatiha. So Maliki Yawmiddin is...
Now the funny thing is, the 7 sentences in the first chapter are already full of mistakes. So it's not only the pronunciation that there's a problem here, but all of a sudden he says Malik and Malik are actually different words because the one is king and the other one is lord. So already we have a discrepancy. So already from the Arabic standpoint, we have different versions here because a lord is something different than a king is. So we have a difference. Now, is it significant here? No. So here, this is just a simple, difference, whether it's Lord or God or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But
the thing is, though, I picked up on that as well, because he uses the word master, Malik being the master of the day, and the other one is king. But the thing is, though some people may say that it doesn't matter, I would argue the case that it does, because you see, a master of something could be someone who's actually appointed, whereas a king or God, he's not appointed, is he? He is God. He doesn't even appoint himself. Yep. It's just recognized and intrinsic with the role that he has within creation, that he is the king in that position. Whereas a master, okay, is someone that's appointed to do something. So I don't see it like that. When the word is being translated, I see that as a role, as someone that's been assigned to somebody, whereas the kingly position is not something that's assigned. That is the inherited position that you have and that you would have as a god. And people are going to translate it, okay, or recite it. How can you get the position of God as king and the role of master? How can you confuse those two roles? We're talking about God there. We're not talking about some kind of role as a mechanic or as a builder or a carpenter or a plumber. We're talking about the role of God here. And this is supposed to be the linguistically perfect book, which is uncreated or created, depending which Muslim you speak to, that's been in heaven for billions of years. So what word is upstairs in heaven, Islamic heaven, that we have to have 2 words down here? So which one do I go with?
Yeah, exactly.
And he also, analysis starts with it cannot be wrong. That's a very bad place to start. You're already assuming that your particular position is correct. That's not a proper analysis of anything. It's like assuming just because a book says something.
Yeah, and it puts your back against the wall right from the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's a tactic for the Muslims. So for the Muslims, is reassuring them, look, don't worry about it. Islam is the truth. The Quran is the truth, right? We're now going to try and fudge the figures and fudge the words so that we can reconcile what Yasser Qadi said a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
I've got to try and clear this mess up. Because even Yasser Qadi, he's using the tactic that Yasser Qadi used. Yasser Qadi said, even though there are holes in it, this is still the word of God. That was his position. So Yasser Qadi said, this is the word. Of that, there is no doubt. This is the word of God. I've now got to try and do some gymnastics, mental, intellectual, emotional, and linguistical gymnastics in order to reconcile this so that my position as a Muslim stays safe. This guy is not doing anything different. He's doing exactly the same thing.
And Marjana is making a good point in the chat, because if you go and look at the historicity of all these claims, of all these texts, of all the documents that you get, you realize that the real Islam only started like 300-400 years later. And that's when the dialects started. And that's why they had to go and accommodate the different dialects. And that is why they were just trying to find some sort of identity for themselves. And this is where they started now going, okay, you guys, you're also okay with this. Yes, just because you're saying the word a little bit differently, we also accept you. This is the historicity that Mustafa was talking about last week, that you have the different areas, the different regions, the different cultures, who all had to have a common understanding, which was the Quran. And this is why they said, well, any version that you recite is okay. And this is
Can
what
I
we
just
see
add
here.
on that, Stops? Can I just add on that, Stops? Also, different time periods as to what the understanding was. That's quite vital
Yeah,
to what you've just said as well.
exactly, exactly.
Is mainly translated to master or owner of the Day of Judgment, while Malik Yawmiddin is basically translated to king of the Day of Judgment. Now,
Okay, I'm
I
going to
find it
jump a
hard
little
to
bit, because
believe
otherwise
that,
we're never going to get
which
through
we
this.
find
Because he
multiple
harps on this
citation
point
ends
a
up being
long time. There's
accepted.
going to be
They
another
were marked
recitation.
down here, which is about the eloquence of the Quran and how Qiyumuddin, that's called Al-Idgham al-Kabir. And this is mainly found in Eastern Arabian tribes at the time, of course, and
Okay, now he's going into the different dialects. Okay, this we can
Sirat
skip.
is pronounced in three different ways. As-Sirat, As-Sirat, and Az-Zirat. Okay, Az-Zirat. Now, the differences between these three, again, have to do with dialects. So, As-Sirat with Al-Sin, it would,
Okay, there's
and what I
not
find really
much
interesting,
substance here. He's just making the same
صراط
claim over and
الذين
over and over.
عليهم is عليهم. That actually is the recitation of Beni Tamim. Benis are intentional. Not only are they intentional, but they are very famous dialects that never ended up being endorsed by the Quran. So, for example, Tarif. All right. So instead of Tarif, Tarif. So instead of Alhamdulillah, it would be Hamdulillah. So keep in mind that the dialects that were revealed as part of the Qira'at are dialects that had to be confirmed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are not.
Okay, he's making the point now that different people had different ways of pronouncing these. And what he is saying is that some of these were confirmed as being in line with the original Quran, and some were not. The problem with this is he doesn't say who is doing that and according to what criteria. Because why would, I mean, this sounds like arbitrary, that somebody will say, well, I think that Malik or Malik or whatever should be okay. And then suddenly somebody says, no, it's not okay. And the other one who says Mulik, well, yeah, that's okay. So he just says, well, they were accepted and they were
There's,
confirmed.
there's a lot of phonic fallacy in all of this. This sounds like a phonic fallacy game.
It's crazy what he's doing. Now, if you go and you listen to what Dr. Shabi Ali says, he says, what this clown is doing, he is pretending that he speaks Arabic to the extent that he understands Quranic Arabic, and he doesn't. Now, Shabi Ali actually is somebody who studied this.
Yeah.
And he said, if you go and you look at a word that he uses, and you look at this word from the 9th century, from the 11th century, and from the 14th century, you will see that there is an evolution in the word. In other words, the word has changed slightly, and the original sounds very different than if you listen to the same word 500-600 years later. So there has been a change in the words. But he says this does not change the original contents of the Quran, but it does change the understanding today of this because the words are different. And this is why you have to know both. You have to know the original Quranic Arabic and the MSA, the modern standard Arabic. And this Farid guy knows neither one of them, he says. So he says a word, and he says, if you go to Lisan al-Arab, and you go to this dictionary, and you look at the word, and you can see that it means that. And then you go to, from what's the other one, Lane, and I forgot the name. Anyway, there's two famous ones, and if you go and you look at the word, you will see that there are differences in the way that the words are being used if you compare it to the old Quran. And telling people that this word has not been changed simply because it has been changed, he says this is stupid. And this is the first time, and now this is quite funny. This Farid guy is now pushing other people up, is pushing scholars to come and say things they've never wanted to say. Like what Yasser Qadhi said, that this is not intended for people like this clown who doesn't have the knowledge, who doesn't have the background, who doesn't have the training. And now he is the one who is causing this big rumble in the jungle for Islam, shaking the foundations of Islam. And now even Shabir Ali has acknowledged, where before he's always said, no, it's always been the same. There have been minor differences in the different kirat, yes, but otherwise everything is. Now suddenly he says, yes, there are different variants. In other words, there are different variants of the Quran which have changes in them, and we cannot explain them. So he is following what Yasser Qadhi said. So now already we have two big scholars saying this.
And not only that, but it's actually like I remember last week I relayed the event happened in Sulaim bin Qais where Ali, when he wrote his version of the Quran too, and he tried to submit it to the Caliph Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr and Umar actually rejected his version of the Quran. So what if one of those variants is his surviving version of the Quran, or and this is documented in Sulaim bin Qais, my apologies. And it was, I think it's the very first or second hadith that states that. So even in the narrative, like, we have some holes there.
I think it's interesting as well that in all of this, he does make a comment earlier on in about halfway through his article where it says to make the Quran easier to recite. And I thought to myself,
Rob, can you take over because I need to leave quickly for a few minutes.
I don't know where the video is. We might have to bring the show to a close anyway. So, but finish off there because I don't know. I can't control the video. So go ahead, Thunderous.
Yeah, I mean, in all of this, he makes the comment that Allah did this, or to make the Quran easier to recite. And I thought to myself, well, this is the whole point of Islam, isn't it? There isn't much in a way of trying to promote understanding. It's all about the reciting, the repetition of reciting, and not much time is given to trying to understand what this book means. And when you consider that here we are now in 2020, the amount of allegations Islam has made over other religions, for instance, all their texts are corrupted. Allah sent 123,999 prophets, to this land, that land, that land. So by implication, in the Hindu text, the Upanishads, the Rig Veda, they're being corrupted by their followers and adherents. Then you've got the canon of the three baskets. Well, actually, Allah must have sent a prophet there, but that book was corrupted. The Bhagavad Gita was corrupted. Is it the Avestra, which is the book of Zoroastrianism? that's being corrupted. Most definitely the Bible's being corrupted according to Islam. And yet there is no evidence of these books being corrupted. It is just the default of Islam, because it has no choice but to say that, given the monumental differences. And yet here we are today now with Islam, 31 and counting different variations, recitations. We have hadith that are strong, we have the hadith that are weak, and we have the hadith that are false. This is the most corrupted and diluted religious collection of texts in the history of mankind. There's a certain irony of Islam's apologetics and polemics, where the default is projection, because everything it alleges about every other religion is exactly the problem that it has for itself. It has no integrity from the top to the bottom. And then Islam, and I did think of this the other day, because I watch and read articles by David Roll, who writes books like Kings and Pharaohs. And it just suddenly occurred to me that I've tried to challenge Muslims when they talk about the preservation of the Quran. And I've quoted Euclid, and I've quoted other various books that predate, the Quran. And they've argued against me, well, you don't know if it's corrupted because you don't have the originals. And then I was watching David Roll on TV doing one of his documentaries about Egyptology. And then it suddenly occurred to me, hieroglyphics. They've not been changed. They've not been corrupted, and we still have the original text from thousands of years before the Quran.
And they can date it, right? So, yeah.
They can date it, yes. So anybody wants to argue with a Muslim, they still do want to argue perfect preservation or Egyptian hieroglyphs.
And not only that, there's this sudden move to like reject the hadith, because they're like, oh, this is all, like most Muslims, if you kind of like, argue with them, it's like, oh, this is all hearsay, and then they're trying to push themselves as Quranists. But then there's a lot of words in the Quran. Even if it were just one text, it's pretty vague. Like, you kind of need the hadith to actually explain the verses.
Absolutely, Mustafa. There is no such thing, in my opinion, right? When you go through the Quran, that you can actually say you're a Quranist. There are 5 or 6 clear commands by Allah that talk about you must follow the Prophet, or when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter. That is monumentally clear, right? Yeah. So when you receive text, how can you follow Muhammad? The only way you can follow Muhammad or follow his orders or be obedient to him is by going to the hadith. There is no other way. So if a Muslim turns around and says, I'm a Quranist only, he's not a Muslim, he's a liar, because he's outright denying Allah at least on 5 different Quranic ayah, where he's disobedient by not following Muhammad because Muhammad is in the hadith. Islam stands on 2 legs. Quran and Hadith, and they're interestingly, both of them are equal. If somebody says that the Quran is superior to the Hadith, he too is a liar, because there's the ayah in the Quran that says it behoves anybody when Allah and His Messenger have decided on a matter. That means Allah, the creator of the universe, is taking counsel from Muhammad on matters and laws and constitutions and decisions. That's a 50-50 partnership.
And with even certain Quranic, you've heard of the 5 prayers, right? In the Quran, in chapter 17, the prayers are 3 times a day, technically speaking, 2 or 3 times, whereas in the Hadith, there are 5 times. But then you have Muslims, you ask these Quranists, and they're like, oh, I pray 5 times a day. But it's like, according to the Quran, you're supposed to pray only 3 times a day. So which one is it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. Is there any last comments? Because it's coming up for 10 o'clock. So I've got a hadith here, which some people have heard before. I just picked it out. It was completely random, but it just shows how random it is. But is there any last thoughts either in the chat or that you guys want to make? Otherwise, I'll read a final hadith. I think Stops has stepped away. So obviously want to thank him for all of the bits that he's done today and all the news and everything else. I'm not sure if he'll be back before we finish. But last words from you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly share that basically, at least within the Shia, jurisprudence, there's a list of scholars starting from the 9th century up to the 1800s, and even to the 20th century that agree that there has been tampering with the Quran itself. That's what I'm going to leave with last.
Your last words, Thunderous or Dr. Muhammad?
want to thank the audience and thank the panel, particularly for Mustafa for his contribution. It's been appreciated, and it's good to have you here for another week. And hopefully, this will be an ongoing relationship with yourself being a part of this show. It's a refreshing dynamic to the conversation we have every week. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good stuff. So let's finish with this. Sahih Muslim, Book 24, Hadith 5246. Aisha reported that Gabriel, peace be upon him, made a promise with Allah's messenger to come at a definite hour. That hour came, but he did not visit him. And there was in the hand of Allah's apostle, a staff. He threw it with his hand and said, "Never has Allah or his messenger angels ever broken their promise." Then he cast a glance and by chance found a puppy under his cot and said, "Aisha, where did this dog enter here?" And she said, "By Allah, I don't know." He then commanded, and it was turned out. Then Gabriel came, and Allah's messenger said to him, "You promised me, and I waited for you, but you did not come." Whereupon he said, "It was the dog in your house which prevented me to come, for we angels do not enter a house in which there is a dog or a picture."
Oh, God. This one.
So that's very likely one of the hadiths. Probably there may be other ones as well, where Muslims have this idea that the dogs are problematic and or pictures, and we see that sort of thing played out. So on that note, I don't know that Stops will be back. So if not, thank you to Stops. Thank you to Mustafa again. We'd love to have you whenever, as everybody has said. Thanks to Dr. Muhammad and Thunderous. Thanks to all of you as viewers. Some people will be in the Discord. Unfortunately, I've got to step away. So if you want to join for an after show and talk about it, I'll put the link again. Here's the link in the main chat in YouTube. If you're watching on one of the other platforms, I'll try to actually post it on all platforms. I'm not sure whether it'll allow me to. It might just reject it. Sometimes it rejects it on Facebook for whatever reason. It might have gone through there, hopefully. So on that note, thank you to everybody. And we will see you again next Friday, 8 p.m. for another edition. Good night and thank you.
Good night, everybody.